Hello everyone!
Hello!
Welcome back to our channel. We are happy to see you again. As usual, we are going to tell you about some hot news on data protection, on legislation and life science. You can see the agenda on your screen. And today we have some great news. For example, the follow-up of discussion between US and UK. But also the adequacy decision for South Korea, etc. We are going to see it together.
So thank you, Manon, for your short introduction. So before starting with the hot news, I just want to tell you that you can find the conclusion of the summit organized by MyData-TRUST at the beginning of the month. And by the same time, you can also subscribe to our newsletter. So let's go with the life sciences news. So the digital healthcare is an area of the most accurate interest right now, and we can see that the data protection and some competition challenges in Ukraine. So ever-increasing costs for maintaining healthcare facilities and scarce resources make digitalizing the healthcare industry inevitable. So patient tracking and other methods can easily be carried out by an application download to the patient phone, but also from on your computer and also from distribution platforms. So medical data is becoming, we can say, the new oil for the whole healthcare industry. But whenever a market emerges, the competition rules should be observed. And the competition rules apply even if the product is information data or data processing services. Since healthcare applications collect unique patient information, cleared from personal details, data holder can exclusive private control over the valuable data sets targeted by other medical companies to be utilized successfully in their own business. So the data holder and their employee must stay up to date with current practice to avoid investigation and inspection.
In telemedicine, doctors and patients are both worried about privacy and data security, and this comes from the Kaspersky Healthcare Report 2021, which found telehealth calls have raised concerns over data security and privacy violation for doctors, nurses, and patients. So, new research from this report, interviewing 389 healthcare providers from 36 countries, reveals that 91% of medical organizations have already implemented telehealth capabilities, with 44% starting to use them after the pandemic. And at the same time, 52% of respondents have experienced cases where patients refused telehealth services due to security concerns. So also, according to this report, AI and robotics are the type of healthcare technology that will add the most value to the healthcare sector in 5 years' time.
So the third news related to the life sciences is the DNA Diagnostic Center, the DDC, who filed a data breach notification with the main Attorney General's office disclosing that hackers accessed sensitive details of more than 2.1 million people. The notification reveals that the breach affected an archived database containing personal information collected between 2004 and 2012 associated with the National Genetic Testing Organization system, which was acquired in 2012. However, the DNA testing firm said it acted swiftly and secured the threat after detecting unauthorized network access.
There is a new health technology assessment approval. So last week, the regulation on health technology assessment was adopted, and the new rules aim to make vital and innovative health technologies more accessible across the bloc. So the regulation is also designed to ensure the efficient use of resources, strengthen the quality of HTA, so the health technology assessment, across the EU, and save national health technology assessment bodies and industry from duplicating their efforts, reassure businesses, and ensure the long-term sustainability of EU health technology assessment cooperation.
So now I will continue with the second part of this MyData-NEWS with the data protection part. So the EU Commission has issued its adequacy decision pursuant to Article 45 of the GDPR for the transfer of personal data from the EU to the Republic of Korea. So after concluding adequacy talks in March, the adoption of the decision marks the final step in the process. It confirms the shared commitment of the EU between the EU and the Republic of Korea to a high level of data protection. Based on this decision, personal data will be able to travel safely from the EU to the Republic of Korea to the benefit of citizens, but also for the economic, without any need for further authorization or additional tools. The adequacy decision builds on the strong protections for Europeans under Korean law when their data is transferred, including through the additional safeguards that were agreed as part of the adequacy dialogue.
And now some news about DMA and DSA. So at the end of November, the EU ministers unanimously adopted a mandate to start interinstitutional negotiation on the DMA and DSA. And as the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Margaret Vestager, said, what would be truly historical is if these regulations were to complete the legislative cycle before the end of the European Parliament's mandate in 2024. And lately, European Parliament approved the text for the Digital Markets Act and will proceed to negotiation on final passage with Council of European Union, which is planned to start under the French presidency of the Council during the first semester of 2022.
For the second news related to the data protection, US facial recognition firm faced 17 million UK fine for serious breaches. This US company that gathered a photo of people from Facebook but also from other social media in facial recognition by its client is facing a 17 million fine after the Information Commissioner Officer, so the ICO, found it had committed serious breaches of data protection law. Clearview AI, which describes itself as the world's largest facial network, allows its customers to compare facial data against a database of over 10 billion images harvested from the internet. This database is likely to include the data of a substantial number of people from the UK and may have been gathered without people's knowledge from publicly available information online, including social media platforms.
German court takes website offline because of non-compliant privacy notice. So mid-September, a German court ordered a lawyer's website to be taken offline because its privacy notice was not compliant. And the summary of the ruling, for instance, was that the court ordered the company to take its website offline because the site did not have a GDPR-compliant privacy notice. The complaint was made by a competitor, and the court rules that the lack of appropriate privacy measures is anti-competitive. So, for example, that are the main points of this ruling. And another important precedent confirming a trend that fraudulent non-compliance can have a serious business impact. In the event of non-compliance, a competitor may rely on unfair competition to take legal actions, and compliance with basic GDPR regulation is becoming urgent because of all of this ruling.
I will talk about the EIPP's data subject request, so insight into the landscape of individual data rights and how organizations provide data transparency to their employees and consumers. This report explores components of a framework for processing data access requests, but also the deletion request and data transparency, including understanding the demand for data rights and its relationship to building brand trust. Privacy and data protection laws around the world increasingly grant individuals the right to access, correct, restrict, or delete their personal data. the Article 15 of the EU General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, but also like 3 specific sections of the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, in particular, have prompted companies to develop more effective means of managing data rights and fulfilling data subject access requests, while preserving data transparency to their employees and consumers.
As you probably heard, Alexandra Jaspar, the co-director and whistleblower of Data Protection Authority in Belgium, has sent her resignation to the House. So Alexandra Jaspar is one of the 5 people who won the DPA, Data Protection Authority in Belgium. The body set up to ensure privacy in the processing of personal data, so a key body since the GDPR entered into force. And she's leaving now her post at the Knowledge Center of the Privacy Watchdog, where she helped screen legislative proposals for privacy issues and ensure that citizens' personal data are well protected. So this resignation director has repeatedly drawn the attention of the chamber, the supervisory authority of the DPA, to the fact that another director, who also chairs the DPA, as well as advisor, are in a conflict of interest, both judge and party.
A German court related to the data transfer after Schrems II. So the German court ordered an university to stop using cookiebot that used US-based server for failing to obtain the data subject's consent to transfer personal data to non-EU countries. In this case, it is irrelevant whether the specific contractual parties of cookiebot is the US-based company or the German company. In any case, the company headquarters is located in Cambridge, in Massachusetts, in the USA. So this is an unlawful transfer according to the Article 48 and 49 of the GDPR. But also, the court states that none of the conditions set out in the Article 49 1.a and the Article 2 of the GDPR are met in the present case. A user of the website is indisputably not asked for his consent for the transfer to the US, and it is also not informed about the possibility risk involved.
We talked earlier about CCPA, now so to have a little word more about the status of the California Privacy Protection Agency work. So the California Privacy Protection Agency, established by the California Privacy Rights, so-called CCPRA, is taking shape. It hired a new executive director beginning October, and it's expected to hire a general counsel and deputy director of administration soon. The agency is also moving forward with its rulemaking responsibilities, engaging in preliminary rulemaking activities as it considers what new regulation or amendments to the regulations are appropriate. And adopting final CCPA regulation by July 1, 2022 statutory deadline remains a challenging task given the scope and complexity of the areas to be regulated and the news agency limited resources.
The Norwegian Data Protection Authority has imposed an administrative fine for approximately 6.5 million to Grindr for non-complying with the GDPR rules on consent. This DPIA's conclusion is that Grindr has disclosed user data to third party for behavior advertisement without a legal basis. In this case, the data shared was GPS location, IP address, advertising ID, age, gender, and the fact that the user in question was on Grindr. User could be identified through the data shared, and the recipients could potentially further share the data.
And now some new EU legal developments regarding targeted advertising third-party cookies. So moves in Parliament hint at incorporating restriction on certain targeted advertising in the incoming Digital Services Act. So for instance, Germany wants users to have the option to visit certain websites without targeting ads. The EDPB states the DSA should more strictly regulate online targeted advertising and recommends a phase-out leading to a prohibition to targeted advertising on the basis of pervasive tracking. And in any case, Parliament is expected to finalize its position on the DSA before the end of 2021, so basically now. And also, EU data protection authorities have become more increasingly active in this area, and many have recently issued or revised cookies guidance, including the DPAs of Italy, Malta, and Luxembourg, to help companies navigate compliance pressures.
The Irish Data Protection Commission lobbied to allow social networks to bypass user consent requirement within EU privacy law, document obtained by Markstrom Privacy Campaign Group show. So the Irish DPC, which regulates the lion's share of US tech companies under the EU General Data Protection Regulation, explicitly pushed for social networks to be able to monitor users' behavior to target them with ads via a contract rather than by having to obtain their consent. This seems to accept monetization of personal data and circumventing the other legal basis. We think that it is an interpretation undermines the system and spirit of the GDPR. But we read that the EU's network of privacy regulator has made pretty clear that there is no legislation circumventing the legal requirement of an informed consent by arguing processing is necessary for the performance of a contract to which the data subject is party.
And now some news about legislation. So the UAE enacts a new federal law on protection of personal data as part of legislative reform package. So the UAE announced end of November 2021 that it had enacted Federal Decree Law of 2021 regarding the protection of personal data as issued at the end of September 2021 and as part of its comprehensive year of the fifth legislative reform, which in turn amend or enact over 40 further laws. And the law here applies to the processing of personal data by wholly or partly automated means or any other means by every data controller or data processor in the UAE processing the personal data of data subject within or outside the UAE. And also, the law prohibits the processing of personal data without the consent of its owner, with the exception of some cases in which the processing is necessary to protect the public interest, or that the processing is necessary to carry out the legal procedures and rights. And the law also established the UAE Data Office.
The UK and US privacy team have been busy this last week. They welcome significant progress made by their respective team to support, stabilize, and realize the benefits of bilateral data flows. And they are committed to achieving a successful and enduring partnership, including on adequacy. The challenging is facing cross-border data flow, and they are increasing global and require solutions that work across multiple jurisdictions. They recognize the negative trends that risk closing off international data flows. In response, they seek to shape a global data ecosystem in a manner that promotes and advances interoperability between different data protection frameworks, facilitating cross-border data flow while maintaining high standards of data protection and trust. They are committed to open and inclusive engagement with international partners, not just between them two, industry, civil society, and consumer and privacy rights groups.
And now an interesting news of Moldova and Malta that signed cooperation agreement on data protection. This agreement was announced by the National Center for Personal Data Protection in Moldova at the end of November 2021. And this National Center highlighted that the agreement provides for the development of cooperative relations between the two bodies in terms of achieving steady progress in the field of data protection and promoting good practices that will create favorable conditions for ensuring effective protection of personal data of citizens in Moldova and Malta.
In New Delhi, the Data Protection Bill is officially slated to be tabled in the winter session of the Parliament, following the submission of its report after nearly 2 years of deliberations. The report is not public, but India will likely soon be charting an uncommon fourth way in data protection, with many provisions in the bill not found in most data protection law. The committee will have recommended that, for instance, social media platforms should be treated as publishers and be held accountable for the content they host, and should be held responsible for the content from unverified accounts on their platform. And transfer of sensitive personal data should be subject to the requirement that a mirror copy be kept in India, whereas critical personal data should be processed exclusively in India.
And now news from Japan. So Japan's amended APPI, so the Act on Protection of Personal Information, that will enter into force on April 1, 2022. So from August to September, Japan's Data Protection Authority, the Personal Information Protection Commission, published updated guidelines and Q&As for the amended APPI, and these documents reveal how the PPC interprets the APPI and how it works as practical regulations businesses are required to follow.
In the US, in the state of Ohio, the legislation required businesses to make changes in the way they handle the data of customers and mandate businesses give customers more information about how their data could be shared. It also requires businesses to provide information to customers about how they can opt out of the data sharing. Members simply want more time to digest the issue, they want to see some transparency, and they want to understand what is they're voting on and what are the consequences back home with this. So some people testified at a committee hearing on the bill Wednesday that they would like to see more changes because the bill doesn't go far enough to protect the consumer. The bill could be ready for a vote early next year, but for now it is considered as being too friendly to the tech industry.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed these videos of 2021. Now this is the end for this year.
But yeah, we want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yeah.
So see you next year.
See you in 2022. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.